hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, February 26, 2024. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Etten?
Here.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Here.
Councilmember Groff?
Here.
Councilmember Strawn? Mayor Rowe?
Here. And Councilmember Strawn indicated that before the meeting she was not able to attend this evening. Next on the agenda, I should let folks know if you're here for various items on the meeting, if you need a copy of the agenda, there are extra copies that you can have on the back table underneath the clock. If you need to see any of the meeting materials or reference those, we do have a copy for the audience in a 3-ring binder on the same table. We try to make information available to everyone as a part of having this open and public meeting. Would remind folks with cell phones to assure that they're either silenced or otherwise won't disrupt the meeting this evening. We'll get to instructions for public comment as we get to public comment opportunities in the meeting. So next would be the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd ask folks to stand if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda this evening is approval of tonight's agenda, and I'll check as I always do first. I forgot introductions. So by way of introduction, Mr. Pat Trudgeon is our city manager on my left at the end of the dais, and our city attorney Rachel Tierney is on my right at the other end of the dais. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll have various staff and guests who will be introduced as items come up on the agenda. With that, Mr. Trudgeon, are there any changes to the agenda from a staff perspective this evening?
Mr. Mayor, staff has no changes to the agenda.
All right. Any changes that council members would like to request or items that council members would like removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Does not appear to be the case this evening. We'll double check with folks in the audience. There's a section on our agenda that starts at the bottom of the first page and moves on to the top of the second page, which is called our consent agenda. These items, it's section 10. These items are normally taken up as a single motion with not a lot of opportunity for questions or discussions or participation by the audience. They're also at the end of the meeting. And so as a convenience for people in the public, if you are here for one of those items in section 10 towards the end of our agenda and have a comment or question, let us know at this time, and we can move that item earlier in the meeting and then take it up so that you don't have to stay to the very end. We'll just double check with members of the public. Is there anyone here this evening for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda? That's approval of the payments, approval of purchases over $10,000, consumption display permit for hidden puzzle rooms, all right, etc. Doesn't appear to be the case. All right. With that, then, is there a motion from council members to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. We have our agenda for this evening. Then the next item on our agenda is the first opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for general public comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So we will have a chance for members of the public to speak on agenda items as they come up, but we do provide, in addition to that, an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting for members of the public to speak to the council about items that either are related to city business but not to be taken up this evening, or items that might be of interest to people in the public that folks want to draw attention to, generally related to the city. Is there anyone here this evening for general public comment, not about a specific item on our agenda this evening? Does not appear to be the case. All right, with that, then, we will move on with our agenda. Our first item after public comment is recognitions and donations. And this evening we have one proclamation in this section, which is a proclamation related to Women's History Month in March. I will go ahead and read the proclamation, and then a motion from the council would be in order to approve that. The proclamation reads, whereas throughout history, extraordinary women have made significant contributions to the growth and strength of our city, state, and nation in countless ways, and whereas through leadership, innovation, and ingenuity, generations of women have made significant contributions in science, medicine, technology, business, politics, entrepreneurship, and culture, and whereas women have been leaders in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, and in the abolitionist, emancipation, industrial labor, civil rights, and peace movements, creating a more fair and just society for all. And whereas, whether serving in elected positions across America, leading groundbreaking civil rights movements, venturing into unknown frontiers, or programming revolutionary technologies, generations of women that knew their gender was no obstacle to what they could accomplish have long stirred new ideas and opened new doors, having profound and positive impact on our community. And whereas, despite their contributions, the role of women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in literature, education, science, and culture. And whereas this month we celebrate countless pioneering women and their victories, and we continue to work to build a society where our daughters have the same possibilities as our sons, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Roseville hereby declares March 2024 to be Women's History Month in the City of Roseville.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Atkins, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on the motion to approve that proclamation? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. That proclamation is approved. I imagine the observation was it was approved by a bunch of men.
Well, I only heard the second from Councilmember Schroeder, which
Oh,
is
okay.
why.
Just before
was-
that was the one from Councilmember Groff.
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Okay.
We could redo
That's
it
the
if we
biggest
need to.
issue we
Yeah.
have tonight.
All right, with that then, that brings us to our business items this evening, and we have a number of items on our agenda, many of which are related to Public Works, but the first of which is related to a completely different topic, and that is to hear an update and presentation from Northeast Youth and Family Services. And we have the Executive Director, Angela Lewis DeMello, with us this evening. I believe for her second time in front of us as the City Council and as in her role, to give us some information about the last year or so at NYFS. Ms. DeMello, welcome. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you for having me, Mayor and City Council members. I'm very excited to be here. Talk a little bit about what we've been up to at NYFS. Slideshow going. There's some materials up there. We have our new brand to share this year, which is very exciting. We have a new brand general brochure, our annual report, which is hot off the presses from last month, and then our strategic plan, which we launched in the fall. So I'll talk more about all those things. So we redid our mission statement, which is shared here. Our new mission statement is transforming lives by ensuring access to care that nurtures healing, cultivates community, and inspires hope. So many of you already know this about us, but to share really quickly, we were founded in 1976. 2 school districts and 10 municipalities came together because they saw a very particular need in our communities related to youth. And on our first day in 1976, we opened with diversion services and with mental health services for youth, including family services. And together, we had 4 staff, and we have now grown to 16 municipalities. We work with 4 school districts, 5 police departments, and then we have locations both in Shoreview and Clear Lake. We really see our work as supporting youth and the whole family, and seeing families as a building blocks of healthy communities. Our services are both trauma-informed and culture responsive, and we live these things in very meaningful ways. The trauma-informed care to us is really about the process of accessing care for our clients, making sure that our physical spaces are trauma-informed, follow trauma-informed design principles, that our paperwork and the first call that people make for help is all really centered on the needs of individuals that have a variety of barriers to access, and one of those barriers can be experiences of trauma. And then we want all of our services to be responsive to the individual needs of every client with all the various identities that they bring into our spaces. So with this focus on ensuring access, we're focused on 4 primary ways of doing that. The first is financial access. We have a sliding fee scale that slides down to $5 per therapeutic session, which is very low for the Twin Cities. And folks can access that either through not having medical insurance or through having a high deductible health plan, because we know that that's a major barrier for a lot of folks. We ensure interpretation and linguistic access with providers that speak more than one language, cultural access, and then logistical access. So thinking about things like transportation, childcare, trying to problem solve with our clients how we can help them access care consistently. So as I said, we have these long-standing partnerships, and it's part of what makes Northeast Youth and Family Services particularly unique is the way that we are very genuinely embedded in our communities. We feel like we're everywhere sometimes. We're in community events, we're tabling, we're showing up when there's a crisis in the community, and we've done a lot of that this last year. And one of the other really unique things about NYFS is that our board is largely comprised of city council members from our municipal partners. Wayne Groff is our board chair and has done an incredible job over the last year and a half, leading us through some turbulent times to getting quite stable, and I'm going to talk about that, but I'm very proud of where we're at right now. So as I said, we have a new mission statement. We also have a new vision statement. Our vision statements, all of these were created through a board and staff engaged process, and our new strategic plan included stakeholder input from the community. Our mission, as I already shared, our vision is to envision a world where thriving individuals and families are the building blocks of safe, unified communities established through a network of empowered and collaborative partnerships. And then our values are listed here: equity, inclusion, and belonging, integrity, being community-driven, innovative, transformative relationships. We really see the space between individuals as the place where the healing really happens. Authenticity and well-being. And we're thinking about well-being not just for our clients, but also for our staff, recognizing the critical importance of supporting our workforce well so they can do this work long-term. I'm not going to go into all the details of our strategic plan, but I do want to share our 4 pillars. The details are in the documents that you have and on our website. So our 4 pillars are: number 1, ensuring our culturally responsive practices are prioritized in all aspects of the organization, embedded in all of our programs. Number 2 is growing our financial stability and sustainability to expand our mission impact in alignment with our organizational values. We really want to be planning ahead in very intentional ways around how we sustain the building that we own, as well as the services that we offer. Number 3 is building a framework for programs that clarifies and enhances our provision of high-quality services. Part of this is really about being very clear about who we are, what we do well, and then doing those things in very depthful ways. And then finally, maturing as a prominent, recognized, and respected resource for our communities. I think part of where we're at in the nonprofit developmental life cycle, we needed this refresh. We needed to kind of come back to who we are and share that with our community. And we don't want to be a resource folks don't know about. We want to make sure everybody knows that we're here to support them. So that's what we're working on through 2026. So we have 2 major departments and 6 primary programs I'll talk about real quickly. Our mental health programs, our mental health department has 3 programs. They're clinic-based mental health services. So we work with individuals, couples, families. We also offer group therapy at both of our locations and on telehealth. And we serve from very little, from 4 years old, all the way throughout the lifespan. And we have very specialized therapists that have specialized interventions based on the developmental needs and presenting issues of our clients. So we have many clients that have experiences of trauma. Our primary 3 diagnoses I'll share later, but it's depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And with those 3, we want to make sure we have comprehensive intervention. So we offer art therapy, which is really great for treating those things. We also offer play therapy. That's a new program we launched last year that works through children's play, which is their work to help them heal from their experiences. And then finally, we've invested a lot in staff training around trauma so that they can be effective at treating that as we see it in a majority of our clients. Our school-based mental health services, we're really proud of these services. We're in the Roseville School District. We have an embedded model, which sets us apart from a lot of other organizations because we're in the school serving not just the clients that are on the staff's caseload, but serving the school. We're showing up for IEP meetings and helping teachers out in the hallway and supporting students that aren't on the caseload but need a little extra help. And then we do that in 4 school districts, includes Mounds View, White Bear Lake, and most recently New Brighton, St. Anthony. Our 3rd mental health program is our day treatment program. And this program is, this level of care is collapsing in the Twin Cities. A lot of day treatment programs are closing. And one in Roseville recently closed. And so we are trying really hard to keep ours going because ours has been going strong for a long time and we provide really great care. This is for folks that have pretty high acuity, so they have a lot of symptoms in a short amount of time, and they're having a hard time getting their needs met within a traditional school setting and need a higher level of care, which includes half-day therapeutic support and then half-day educational support that's provided through the Mounds View School District. The
kids that we serve in the day treatment program on average have 9 or 10 primary traumas, significant traumas before they come to us. And then we work with them generally for 9 months to a year. So they're with us every day for a while. And then they go back to their home district typically. And then our other set of programs are our community service programs. We have our youth diversion program, which started when we started, and that's for youth that are referred for offenses such as theft, drug use, etc. One of the cool things about our program is that youth need to engage in an offense, but they don't necessarily need to have been charged. And so we have youth that are referred through the schools, through SROs. We have youth that are referred through parents that want to get them some help. So we're able to do things a little bit more on the preventative front end side, which is really nice. It's an alternative to the traditional justice system, and our program is based on restorative principles. So we do educational seminars, community service, folks pay restitution if that's part of the plan, substance use assessment and referral are some of the other services that we offer. But the goal is really to get underneath, to get a sense of what's really going on with that youth and that family, and then get them the resources they need to be successful. Our recidivism rate for this program is extremely low, on average 3%. So it's very successful. It's been around for a long time. And from this outgrew our Community Connections program. This program, we did one round before the pandemic, and then we relaunched it. It's a 7-week program that helps youth perceive a brighter future in a really concrete way by going out into community, receiving mentorship, doing some career exploration. They have exposure to St. Paul College. We do life skills work with them, and they do some service at Feed My Starving Children. And then our final program is our advocacy program, and we work with 5 law enforcement agencies, including Roseville, to co-create public safety. We provide support for citizens outside the scope of law enforcement. So we do a lot related to housing, mental health concerns, substance use, neighbor disputes, kind of the range of reasons why people might be repeat callers. We want to provide them that deeper support. So this is what we have been up to lately. These are some statistics. For our fiscal year goes July to June. So we saw 603 folks last year, and last year was a rebuilding year. So these stats are from right about when I started at the organization through the summer of last year, and we've just done a really great job of being able to turn the organization around. So we expect to see closer to 1,000 folks this year now that we're fully restaffed up, which is pretty exciting. And one of the cool things about the 603 folks that we did see last year is that we saw them in a really depthful way. They received over 11,630 appointments. And I think what's notable here is also that we did 601 assessments for mental health services. So folks really coming to us to try and understand what's going on for them and what their recommendations are. And as I shared earlier, these are the 3 top diagnoses that we treated. It's a little bit about our fiscal picture. So for last fiscal year, this is our revenue. Majority of our revenue comes from third-party insurance billing. The majority of that is through Medicaid. We have in-kind, which is mostly internship interns coming and providing services with us. Our municipality contracts are about $561,000 across the 16 cities, and then grants and contributions are about $312,000 or so. And then we do own that building in Shoreview, and so some of it is rental income that we manage. And then our expenses, the bulk of expenses in a nonprofit are staff. It's staff time, staff hours. And our biggest program is our mental health program. So you can see how that all breaks out. Administrative support, fundraising, mental health, and community services. So as I've said, we had this big year, and we came to an organization that had been deeply affected by COVID, and we really needed to do some deep investment, some reflection, and then quick action in order to be able to get where we needed to go. Wayne's been a great partner through all of it. And so we did this new brand, mission, vision, value statement, our strategic plan. We launched some new services, including child-centered play therapy. In this period, we also expanded. We added Arden Hills as a municipal partner. We expanded our school base to St. Anthony, New Brighton, launched our Community Connections program, and then we did a lot of investing in our space because it had gone a little unattended to. And so we created an environment that is trauma-informed for our clients at both locations, including reopening White Bear Lake full-time. And excitingly, we developed an internship program called Steps Towards Equitable Practices Scholar Program. And so we take 4 to 5 interns. We have a more robust internship program now, a cohort model of 7 or 8 interns, and then 4 or 5 are Steps interns. And so we provide a stipend and specialized mentorship and training for BIPOC interns so that we can ensure that we have a diverse workforce in mental health, which has been a challenge. And then finally, where are we headed? So we're going to continue to expand the size of our clinic-based therapy team. We really want to fill out all the offices in our White Bear Lake location. This is now 20 therapists that we've hired in the last 18 months, which is incredible if you know what's going on in the workforce. We're doing something special in terms of drawing people in and then keeping them, which is critical. We're intending to develop some additional group therapy services. We have really good spaces for this, but we can serve more people with fewer staff resources, and with significant mental health needs right now, we need to find ways of kind of providing a degree of support to folks that maybe isn't the same as individual services, but will help them sustain their mental health long term. And then very excitingly, we got this wonderful grant from the Office of Justice Programs to launch domestic and sexual violence services. So the way that this came about was we did an assessment with our current clients to figure out the number of our clients that experienced domestic or sexual violence, just those two adverse. We didn't assess for physical abuse or emotional abuse or anything else. And 75% of our current clients reported experiencing one of these things. 95% of our clients are 26 or younger. So let's just sit with that for a second. 75% of our clients, 26 and younger, experience this, and that's almost everybody. And that's just reported. That's not folks that haven't reported yet. And so we saw that need. I have a background in domestic and sexual violence. We have a number of staff with expertise doing just that work as well. So we knew we could stand up a program really quickly. We looked around the 16 cities that we serve, and there are no programs geographically located in our area. And so we put together this really beautiful program and then somehow got it funded the first year. And OJP CVS funding is very stable, so we can expect this funding for at least 5 years. So it's not a program that will come and go. It's part of who we are now. And we're just about to launch it. So the program will have 2 advocates, one youth advocate and one adult advocate. The youth advocate will also do general crime, and they'll be part of the team with our community advocate that works with Roseville Police Department. So there'll be 3 advocates on that team, which will also help us retain that one advocate because they'll have a team now. And then 2 therapists, one focused on youth services, one focused on adult services, both doing groups in addition to individual. Groups don't reimburse very well, so the additional funding for that is very helpful. So we're very excited about this and being able to offer this to our community. And that's it. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Well, first of all, wow.
Yep.
Thank you as an organization and all of the people that work with and for NYFS for everything that you're doing in our communities. I really appreciate that. This is a great update, and it's having served on the board many years ago before Councilmember Groff, I remember the old days, and so it's very inspirational to hear about where the organization is now and the vision that you have for the future. And so it's great to be reminded of that and in these types of updates for both the council as well as members of the community, not only to understand what you're doing in the community and that this is you're one of our neighbors and you're right here doing this good work. But also that it is a service or many services available to people in the community, and we need to get the word out there as much as we can. So to the extent people are paying attention this evening or watch our meetings later, this is a nice opportunity to make that connection for folks. Are there any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. Being the newest member here, it's good for me to hear all the details, so thank you. And you talked about that you're expanding and you added more people to the staff, and right now you're serving 603 clients. With this expansion, do you have any idea how many more clients or what percentage of increase do you see in that?
Yeah, so we expect for this fiscal year, next time I come back and present, we expect to have the number be closer to 1,000. And then when we add with the filling of all of our therapeutic positions that have been open, and then by once we have the domestic and sexual violence services fully up and running, that'll probably be another couple hundred a year. So we're really excited about the ability to impact our community.
Great, thank you.
Are there questions or comments, feedback?
Well, I would just,
Councilmember
add that, of course, I'm the biggest cheerleader for this group because I've been living it for a few years here now. But the difference that it makes in people's lives is just really amazing to hear the stories. Because every time we have a board meeting, either Amelia or Angie will use one case, not using names, but using the situation to let us know what had happened with them and what the outcome is. And it's just like, wow, it really makes a difference. So thanks so much.
And just to add to what's already been said, I think that, it's well recognized that mental health care is an area that, as you noted, is continuing to have need and perhaps even an increasing need in our community. And yet it still takes sort of a backseat to medical care. And people don't always, even though you have typically insurance coverage or it's covered through medical assistance type programs, it's hard for people to enter into the system, because I think people sort of have just a level of fear or concern about sort of what it may mean for themselves to get into it or their family members. And so anything we can do and the things that you're doing to help people sort of bridge that gap and be able to get into the system and making it be a low bar to get in and get the help that people need, I think is really something that can be a model for other providers out there. So we
A
really
lot of
appreciate it.
stigma, and mental health is health, and we know that treating mental health prevents physical health issues. And so there's a very close relationship between both, and we want to make sure folks know that so they can come to us. The other thing I forgot to say that I want to just mention is we are relaunching our leadership luncheon this year. It'll be on May 8th. You'll all receive an invitation, but we hope that you'll come. It'll be in person. So.
Great, thanks for mentioning that as well. All right, well, if there's no other feedback from the council, we'll thank you again. And you can enjoy the rest of your evening while we take up some other subject matter for the rest of our meeting.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we really do
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Angie.
Take care. All right, shifting gears here a little bit. I believe pretty much the remainder of our evening will be dedicated to the Public Works area of the city of Roseville, and we very aptly have our Public Works Director with us this evening, Jesse Freihammer, to go through a number of different ordinance updates that have come forward as needs for updates in what we do in that area. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Freihammer for the first item, which relates to abatement of public nuisances, specifically as it relates to public works once again in the city.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so tonight we have a variety of ordinances that we're gonna bring at you. The first is amending chapter 407 of the city code, which deals with public nuisances. So currently, this is used by our community development staff, typically when we've brought nuisance violations. But we did discuss this with the city attorney about when Public Works has to get involved on nuisances, because we deal with that from time to time. Some of it is spelled out in like the water chapter, but on how we actually finalize it and then potentially can assess those costs. So typically, the typical repairs that this would be used for is if we had like a water main break or a water service leak. Usually we let people know they repair it. From time to time, though, it does come up where, particularly in the winter, if a resident isn't responding fast enough, we do need to abate that because it's causing icing to the roads or whatnot, or just loss of water. So that's the sort of reasoning we're looking for it. We also are starting to do a lot more enforcement of our code in relation to like private hydrants to make sure they're working. We are getting a lot of compliance, but we're envisioning by the summer, some of those properties might not get their hydrants up to speed, and we might have to take further action on it. So, like I said, this part of the code pretty much is just giving Public Works the ability to utilize that as well. So with that, I will open it up to the council for any questions on the proposed ordinance amendment.
Great, thank you, Mr. Freihammer. Are there questions from the council on this ordinance change? Oh, and I should maybe just generally ask, all of these ordinances have been posted with the proper notice, and so we could take action on them this evening, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this particular nuisance enforcement ordinance update? And just to note, I think on almost all of these, there was a bench handout provided, and there are various minor tweaks. I think in this particular case, it was just on the second page on line 51, sort of an extraneous reference to impacting the public rights of way as a reason to do the accelerated, which was, I think, sort of unintentional. We certainly want it to be only accelerated abatement in the case of something that's imminent threat to public health or safety. And so I appreciated staff's adjustment of that language to remove the very broad qualification for that emergency abatement. Questions from the council? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this particular proposed ordinance change this evening? Hello and welcome. And while you're coming up to have a seat, we'll just remind folks this is a good opportunity to remind folks of the rules of the road for public comment. They are set by council rule, but generally we have a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which I try to enforce gently and generously. But also then we want to make sure questions or comments are directed to the city council. If we've got a number of people speaking, we may not answer individual questions or comments right after the commenter, but rather at the end of the whole comment process. Additionally, we may not be able to answer everything this evening, so we may have to have follow-up if necessary, so just kind of be prepared for that. And when you begin your comments, if you could just state your name and either street or address to help identify the comment in the public record. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. Well, it's been a while.
Welcome
since
back.
I've been since I've been to the chamber, so it's nice to see friendly faces and new faces. So, my name is Lisa McCormick. I'm a Roseville resident, and I think you may have addressed my concern, which was on the second page that the simple fact of something impacting or affecting the right of way would do away with the right of notice and a hearing. So correct me if I'm wrong, so that's been stricken?
I think we've addressed it. That was the intent of the change we made, which was to strike out that language on line 51.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I just didn't, my concern was that people should have an opportunity to notice. I mean, if it's an emergent issue or something that needed being addressed immediately, that's one thing. But if it's a simple matter of affecting the right of way, I thought, a property owner should still get noticed. So that was all I had.
Great. Thank you for your comments this evening, and it's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Other members of the public wish to speak to this particular proposed ordinance change related to public nuisances? All right, does not appear to be the case. Then we'll close public comment opportunity on this item, and we'll move to council consideration. And once again, the consideration would be on the bench handout, which, once again, for members of the public, if you look at page 2 of this particular ordinance, on line 51, there was language that said, or is impacting the public right-of-way, sanitary, or storm sewer. And that language has been stricken so that the criteria for the immediate threat, city abatement, emergency abatement, is as referenced in the previous line, which is the immediate threat to health or safety of the public. And so that I think addresses what the concern of the speaker was, which was sort of, our intention is not to have a process for immediate abatement of issues unless there's that threat to the health and safety of the public, and it's an immediate threat. So hopefully that addresses that for folks. With that, is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by, I gotta get my paperwork in here. Moved by Councilmember Etten, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder, to adopt the ordinance, once again, the bench handout, making that change to the nuisance code. Is there discussion on the motion as the maker of the motion, Councilmember Etten?
Nope.
All right, as seconder, other discussion on the motion? All right, perhaps we've covered it well enough already. All right, with that then, all those in favor of adopting the ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0. That ordinance is adopted. We do also, I believe, have an ordinance summary that needs to have approval for publication. And so it would be appropriate at this time to have a motion to authorize the publication of the summary.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder. This does require a supermajority of 2/3, which in our case is 4 out of the 5 council members, and that includes absent members. So just to make that note for people. All those in favor of authorizing publication of an ordinance summary signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That also passes 4-0, meeting this majority requirement. That then brings us to item 7C, which is to consider an ordinance amending chapter 707 related to right-of-way restorations. And once again, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fryhammer for this ordinance proposal.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So our 707.12 deals with right-of-way restoration. This typically comes into play when someone does a utility repair and/or potentially, or new utilities are getting put into a neighborhood. One thing, the current code isn't extremely clear on, so we wanted to clear it up. But right now, we do have in the fee schedule for staff residents can elect to choose to have us do the street repair. What staff is looking to do is get staff a little more ability to choose if we do the street repair. And a lot of times when we do the street repairs, we know it's done well. It's done up to our standards. We don't have to do a lot of babysitting. It gets done on time versus a lot of utility patches might sit there for weeks and we're constantly following up with them. And if it gets repaired, a lot of times they have to get redone. So this would basically give us kind of like the first right of refusal to choose that. We're not going to choose all patches. Certainly if someone's doing a very large one, we'd still let a contractor do that. But the typical one where someone's just doing a utility repair, our fees that are in the fee schedule are pretty reasonable. We compare that to what residents or contractors would get, and in most cases, we can do it almost cheaper than that, and that's why a lot of contractors already elect us to do it. And then certainly if we, for whatever reason, 1,000 people want to get their utilities replaced or something, we'd still have the ability to say we can't do that. So it's not, we would just do this as we have staff capacity, but we certainly feel like we can do that. Typically, we just lump them all together, like on a Friday afternoon and complete them all. The other aspect that we did have, I didn't have that in this slide, but that we did have is that this would allow us to revoke permits or not issue new permits if there is outstanding work that a utility contractor hasn't done. Our intent is to work with contractors on that, not to, if they have some minor restoration, but if they've been required to do something for 12 months, this would kind of be the last straw, saying, hey, you're not going to get any new further permits until you complete the work you've already been told to do. So with that, I will certainly answer any questions that the council may have.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Fryhammer. Questions from the council on this particular ordinance amendment? Councilmember Schroeder.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is on line 186. It talks about what you just ended up speaking on, satisfaction of all outstanding orders have to be closed before you would give them another permit to open. My question is, what if there are reasons beyond their control, say weather or supply chain or something comes up where it just isn't, they just cannot close an order and yet they have another project coming forward? Is there some flexibility then to give them some grace for that?
Yeah, we currently work with all utility contractors and vendors. That's not our intent. Like I said, these would be for cases where we've gave them ample time to do stuff. Kind of the classic example is relocating utilities if we need them to move. A lot of times we give them 6 to 8, 12 months in advance. If 3 other utilities relocated and they're the only ones that hasn't, why not? But this would help us give a little more encouragement to get them out of the way, because they are a lot of times holding up another public project or costing us more money on our project. So, but yeah, we would only use this kind of as a last resort, and if
But there could be an opportunity to have more than one open then if the circumstances.
Absolutely, yep.
So this isn't an absolute.
Yep, this is kind of like our last step that we would use
Okay.
if they haven't
Thank
been
you.
compliant.
Other questions for staff? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this proposed amendment change related to restoration work in the public right-of-way, either street patching or the enforcement ability related to the permitting on unfinished business? Anyone from the public wish to speak? All right, seeing no one, once again, we've got the request before us, and I believe this one, does this one also have a bench handout? Yes. And that's related to line 227, among other things, the word "if" was taken out on that line before some added language, and there may have been another change too.
Minor approval.
Minor typos or corrections.
Okay. I heard a motion to approve from Councilmember Etten.
Second.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Discussion on that motion, Councilmember Etten?
Nope.
Councilmember Groff as the seconder.
No.
Any other council discussion on this proposed ordinance change? Hearing none, once again, we've got before us the motion to approve the changes to section, or chapter 707 related to right-of-way restorations. And this is once again the bench handout. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0, and that ordinance is approved. We also then, I believe, also have a request for an ordinance summary on this particular ordinance. And once again, this is to authorize publication of a summary, so we don't have to spend the money to publish the whole ordinance in the official paper, but it does require that supermajority vote. Is there a motion to authorize publishing the
So
summary?
moved.
It's moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Etten. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. That meets the supermajority requirement, and the ordinance summary is authorized. That then brings us to our first of two ordinance amendments related to 801 of our code, which is our water section, I believe, of the code. And I'll turn it over once again to Mr. Fryhammer for the first of these two.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the first part of the water code we're looking at is 801.10, which is dealing with water meters. So currently, the code requires a water meter deposit. So anytime anyone builds a new home, or even when they buy or sell it, they're required to put a deposit down. So this is kind of really more of a finance/administrative item. But we collect a lot of deposits, and then when you sell your house, you get your deposit back, or if you ever demoed the house, you get your deposit back. So it's tracking a lot of deposits. So currently, there's over 10,000 meter accounts that have a deposit associated with it. So as you can imagine, if 1,000 people move or get new accounts, that's 1,000, we're adding money, taking money away. So just we did look a lot, majority of cities no longer have meter deposits required. We believe the intent was, to make sure meters stayed in place over the long term. But we have other ways of tracking that now and also abating that if people steal their meter, or remove it. All the meters now or I shouldn't say all, the vast majority of our meters have a radio on, so we kind of have real-time data on that, so less of an issue. But certainly this would save a lot of staff time, just accounting for all the meters out there. So staff is recommending that we just change that to a fee. The way that would work is there would still be a fee when a contractor came in to apply, for example, for a new home. They would pay the $500 or whatever the cost of the meter would be, but that would be a fee. We would use that to pay for the meter, and then there would be no deposit. So as the home sold, there would be no exchanging of money. So with that, I can certainly answer any questions. I will add there is no, this is one of the ordinances that we do not have a ordinance summary on, so.
Great, thank you, Mr. Fryhammer.
Mr. Mayor?
And I also wanted to note on the ordinance itself, and I'm going to double check the bench handout, I noticed that the title still says referring to or requiring a water meter security deposit. And I'm wondering if that meant to say to change it to require a water meter fee or something along that line. This is right at the top of the first page.
Yeah, it probably should be.
Because I think the security deposit language is
Changing
right
it
from the original
changing
code.
from deposit to fee.
Yeah, yeah. So just wanted to make that note. And would it be a security fee or just a fee at that point?
Fee, and I should add, we will be bringing next council meeting, amendment to the fee schedule to reflect the change from a deposit to a fee.
Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Trudgeon?
Yes, if I could, just regarding to the water meter deposits, as noted, the staff report talks about having this kind of slowly over a period of 40 to 50 years as people sell homes to get rid of those deposits. That's certainly an option. I think in having some conversations with a couple council members, there might be some interest in moving that ahead a little bit more frequently. Just as a reminder, all of our funds are tied up in pretty non-liquid assets, so we literally couldn't write a check tomorrow. It would take some time, and I think we'd want to be sensitive to the timing of that somewhat, given our fund balance as well. So I would suggest that staff go back and come back and bring forward a plan that maybe look at proactively refunding these amounts over a period of years. At this point, I'm not sure what that period of years, we have to do some analysis on that. So nothing you need to do tonight, particularly on that, because it's not written in the code that it's going to be paid back a certain way. But we can come back with some policy conversation about that and then make some determination in the future. So just wanted to mention that to the council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I'm glad you brought that up because certainly I think that's something that is perhaps or could be on the mind of the public is if we're saying we don't need these deposits anymore and yet we've got theoretically about a $1.5 million balance of deposits, why aren't we returning people's money to them? And so I appreciated staff's kind of research into that. I do understand that notion, and so I think we do want to be responsive to that point of view, rather than sort of letting this happen through attrition over, as was noted, potentially up to 50 years. I think we do want to be a little more proactive, but I also understand that important perspective that these funds aren't just sort of in a cash account that we can immediately make them available for this purpose. So we want to make sure that we're being responsible with city finances as well and not putting ourselves in a bad situation. So I appreciate that also, and it seems to make sense to me, and we can certainly have a conversation about it. But you're correct that the ordinance change this evening just gets rid of the deposit requirement and changes it to a fee for new meters. So I appreciate that. Are there other questions or questions or feedback from council members? Councilman?
Just a question, so if it changes from the fee, and you said if they're building a new home, then they pay a fee and have a meter installed. What happens if someone's meter breaks in 8 years, then how is that handled?
So if it breaks because of if they damage it somehow, they had a contractor and they're doing work, or they damage it, or the meter froze, the code currently already has in there that they would pay for the new meter.
And
So
if it
that's-
isn't that, and it's just doesn't
Yeah,
work
so
anymore?
for example, if they, if they demoed the house and they destroyed the meter, they forgot to tell us to come pull the meter before they demoed it, then we could potentially assess them. The code allows us to do that, so that's how we could recover at least the cost of that meter, because theoretically, if someone demos a house, we can reuse the meter in another location.
But if it just stops working,
But if it just stops working because it's out of warranty, we would just replace that at our
Okay.
cost. Yep.
that's what someone's
Yep.
gonna ask, I'm sure.
Yep.
So get out of that.
No, good
Yeah,
question.
we only charge if it's what damage that
Yep.
they caused.
Makes sense.
Other questions? Councilman Schroeder?
Thank you for bringing up the deposit payback time, because that was one of the questions I had on speeding that up over instead of 40 to 50 years. And the one thing is, I know when this policy's in place, these are long-term deposits, so the city would invest them in long-term investments. And so to change it now, I would understand we'd have to make sure that we don't want to liquidate a long-term investment until it matures. So that makes sense that it would take longer than immediate to pay that back. And so I'm looking forward to seeing finance come up with a number of scenarios, because we don't want to cause a cash flow issue, but on the other hand, we do want to make sure and get people's money back faster than 50 years. So anyways, thank you for that.
And probably worth noting too, I don't think this changes our procedure right now or our practice of people get interest on their deposit, I believe, credited to their account each year.
No.
And that will continue going forward, so no change to that.
I did.
That's not how it works.
Or it's not.
Well, I'm not quite sure how it works. I was not
Okay.
able to determine the.
Okay. I had seen something in an email about that, but if I'm wrong about that, I apologize. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are able to.
I don't know what the interest rate is, but I do
Michelle
know
here.
there's some sort of interest. I know we talked about this at a staff that was mentioned, but I don't know what the interest rate is.
Okay. But regardless, some of those practices would not change. We would just eventually eliminate the funds that we have on account for those deposits.
Correct.
All right. With that, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this particular proposed change to bring sort of our meter funding and deposit policy in line with sort of current situations and practices?
Roger, that's Junior Wagner Place. The new fee that you're gonna have, what costs are you trying to recover with that fee? And then, another question I had was, about how many meters disappear every year that we had as a security deposit? I mean, we lose one or two, or we lose 100 every year, or that we needed that security deposit in the first place? And yeah, we should, I mean, when you figured out the rates were wrong a couple of years ago, they were charging for utilities, you wanted your money from the people right away. So if you don't need this deposit money, you should give it back as quickly as you can, rather than waiting 40, 50 years or whatever. And then one other thing, I don't know if you should postpone the vote on this, because when you sent out the email about the proposed ordinance, and if a person went to the proposed ordinance page, the ordinance on the proposed ordinance page was completely opposite what's actually happening tonight. Because on there, it said that you crossed out the word fee and you put in the word deposit. So I don't know if you should revise that and resend the email out so people know what's being voted on tonight. Because a lot of people might have looked at the proposed ordinance page, saw what was going on, and said that's fine, and not looked at the packet, which was right. So, I don't know, I assume you send out that email with the proposed ordinance to tell people about the ordinance, but you had it completely backwards on there. So, thank you.
Right, thank you. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this proposed ordinance change related to the meter deposit changing to a fee? Seeing no one, we'll close the opportunity for comment on this item. And just if we can maybe address the questions that were brought up. I believe it was alluded to that the fee would relate to the cost of the new meter and installation, and so I'll just ask Mr. Fryhammer to confirm
Correct.
that or.
Yeah,
correct
the
that.
current fee deposit is based on the size of the meter. It varies on the size of the meter going in. Our proposed change to the fee schedule, when we bring that at a future council meeting, will be just changing the word deposit to fee, so that'll remain the same.
And the idea
Just
is
covering
that
the
we're
cost, the actual cost of the physical cost of the meter.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And I don't imagine that currently there's a significant issue with meter loss, but I believe this was put in place when the city originally went to providing city water, and there may have been a different scenario then that none of us may be aware of in our current.
Correct. I'm not
existence.
aware of, every once in a while, we have one get destroyed during a demo. That's about the only way. We don't have them walk away from buildings very frequently.
Which is the whole point of changing the policy from a deposit. And then just maybe check with the attorney in terms of ability to act on an ordinance if the posted ordinance is potentially incorrect as compared to what's being considered. Ms. Tierney?
I'll leave that to you. I think that you could act on it. The text of it was accurate and was published accordingly. But you know, the error in the title, if you think that would have impacted and whether an individual would want to speak to you, you could certainly delay it. The one point I would make is that I think that the subject matter of what we're talking about is what happens when you, how much money, what money you put down when you get a meter is pretty clearly what you're considering tonight, although the error is unfortunate.
Right, and so as I understand it, you're referring to an error in the title, and I just want to make sure that is in fact what the issue was.
Well, so, no, not exactly. There was error in the title that was pointed out tonight, but the fee, the words fee and security deposit were switched. So the one in your packet was correct. The one that was posted online previously had that mistake. For some reason, there were two different versions going around. So what you would receive in the packet was always correct. But what was posted on the website under our requirement by the state to post within 10 days had the words crossed out and underlined differently, just with the security deposit and fee flip-flopped, if you will. If we want to make it simple, we can just bring it back and have a clean ordinance. That's perfectly fine.
I'd be more comfortable.
Well, I guess the question, just to clarify the question though, from a legal point of view, even if the notice had errors in it, does that preclude cities from adopting ordinances if a posted copy is not accurate?
It does not.
Okay, so we could conceivably take action, but it's up to the comfort level of the council, obviously. Is the general preference to bring this one back
Yes.
then? Okay.
I'd rather bring it back because it's
I'd
And
It's
along
confusing.
with a new notice?
I think
So
that
the
would be
10-day
better.
prior to
Yep.
taking it up? Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that was part of it as well.
I'd,
We
yeah,
can,
bring
we
it
can
back.
certainly do that, all right. So no need to move to table, we'll just make sure that it comes back to the council at a time when we've provided a 10-day notice with the proper language in the ordinance. All right. That then brings us to the second, I was just gonna note, for benefit of the council and the public, in this particular one, there was a correction that had really nothing to do with the changes that were being proposed, but somehow it may be related to the drafts circulating more than one. In paragraph B on page 1 on line 33, in the draft that was originally in our packet, it said in accordance with the set by the Public Works Director, and so somehow the word standards had been pulled out of what was existing language, which raised a question, and so I confirmed with staff that was an error, so that has been fixed in the bench handout, and hopefully will be fixed in what's posted before our
Make
next
sure everything's
consideration.
correct.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, then we will go to the second subject matter related to the water ordinance, and this relates to the private water supplies, and I'll once again turn it over to Mr. Fryhammer for this item. Mr. Fryhammer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the second part of the water code is 801.22, which is private water supplies, or also known as wells. So currently there are 26 residential wells that are used for basically all home use, potentially even irrigation. There's probably a lot of other homes that have a well that's just used for irrigation, but we don't have that because it's not a metered use, at least in this sense. And then there's potentially a number of commercial wells, but that we're not aware of. But what we were trying to do on this code was to just look at the residential wells to certainly enhance the prevention of additional wells being drilled in the future. There's currently code on when a well can get drilled. It's pretty restrictive, but we did try to tighten that up a little bit. The major change here is proposing residential properties that are on wells get connected to city water by 2035. This is kind of a common practice in many cities. Roseville has never had this, but a lot of times you want to compel them to connect. That way you know you don't have any cross connections. You also can meter your sewer use. Currently, these 26 homes just have a flat assumed sewer rate, so it could work both ways. If you have a really large family, you could be using lots of water and you're getting a benefit. It could also be your one person home, and so it could work both ways, but certainly the fair way would be to make sure that's metered properly. We did notify all 26 property owners. I have only heard from 2 residents. Just had a couple questions. One was actually not aware that they even had a well on their property, which does speak a little bit to why we want to make sure we potentially get them all connected to city water. Currently, as years go by, we probably every year we get 1 or 2 connect. Typically, when your well fails, you're not allowed to drill a new well, so you do connect to city water at that time. The other major way we see is when people sell their home, the new property owners don't want to be connected to a well, so then they connect to city water at that point. So we did put the year 2035, I think it was like July 31st or something out there. Honestly, that's an arbitrary date. We wanted to look out far ahead. We wanted to make sure residents have time to plan for it. The other thinking was, like I said, we have 1 or 2 a year. 11 years from now, we might only have 5 or 6 that wouldn't have connected anyway. So I did look at the map, kind of reviewed it. The majority, I would say all but one property owner all but one parcel is very typical residential lot, should be a relatively simple water sewer service. There is one property owner that has their home is actually very deep on their lot, so they would have a little more extraordinary costs. So with the exception of that, the majority of them is, they have a standard setback lot. The cost will vary for property owners depending upon where their water is or where their existing well is. If the well is in the back of their house, our water services are typically on the street side. That may involve a little bit more plumbing to get into your house. Like I said, all these eventually would end up connecting. This would just make the date a little quicker, but we feel that would help finalize where we're at. Like I said, most cities, when they've added water systems, typically have put those dates in. You get, from the time water's available, you get 10 years or 20 years. We have never done that, but this would just put a final date for our water system. A lot of these homes have probably had water since the 60s or 70s, so it's been available for a long time. So with that, I will turn it over for questions. Otherwise, like I said, I do know we notified all property owners, so there may be a few here to provide comments.
Thank you, Mr. Fryhammer. Are there questions from the council on this item? Councilmember Schroeder.
Thank you. I'm glad you looked at the maps because that was one of the things I was questioning. I know when a well is very deep in a property, it can be quite expensive then to hook up to city water. And I know some cities grandfather in a well if it's a certain distance from hookup. And so is this something to think about? And then when someone actually is deep like that and then it does fail, obviously they'd still have to do it. But that was my one concern, that it was gonna be very expensive for a property owner to have to do this. And so the thought is, do we even wanna consider the distance, as a possible grandfathering in? I don't know which property it is or how far it is and how deep but that might be something to think about, because we don't want to burden our residents with some big costs if we don't need to. Just a thought.
Other questions or feedback? Councilmember Brown?
So the concern is a couple things, is what I'm hearing. The sewer fees would be easier to establish correctly if we have this done. I know from the county and the state, one of the reasons they're concerned about these wells is because it can contaminate the groundwater. And when you were talking about crossing over, is that the same thing you're talking about there, getting contaminating the city water?
Well, just cross connections, we've been, just anything that potentially could, someone connects from their system to, neighbors, just all sorts of weird things can happen when you're on a well versus not on the city system. If we do temporary water, but to know that, because like I said, a lot of people don't know they're on the city water. If everyone's on the same system, it eliminates the risk of cross connects. I know we're dealing similar but unrelated. We're trying to, make sure we have two properties in Roseville that are both on St. Paul water and Roseville water, which is the same water, but they're on two different water systems, or at least parts of their building. So it just risk causing issues for a variety of reasons. So, like I said, just trying to get everyone on one similar page.
I know in the real estate industry, it's not very usual to have them stay through a sale because the new owner doesn't. Typically in the metro area, they don't understand wells and they don't understand the maintenance, and they're concerned about the contamination or having them checked every year to be sure that they're safe. So I think that that alone will be another motivation for people to not continue on with this.
Yeah, and like I said, since I've been here, that's been the vast majority. When they sell, someone goes, "Hey, I see it's on a well. Well, how can I connect to city water?" That's been the theme. Because, like I said, most of these wells, I didn't add, but majority of these, we didn't look up the dates of all the wells, but the majority of them were built or drilled in the 50s or 60s.
Right.
So they're well past their expected life.
Right.
If it was maintained properly, maybe they can get years out. But it's not like these were drilled in the 80s and they're only 40 years old. These are almost 70, 80 years old, a lot of these wells.
Other questions from council members? I did have a couple of questions. One, just in relation to the cross connects, is there also potential an issue that we're trying to deal with in terms of if people continue to use a well for irrigation purposes, they need to make sure it's not connected to their indoor plumbing so that they don't have the potential of well water getting into the city supply, is that correct?
Correct. So the code does speak to that as well. So, like I said, we've typically we've not required when the well goes, if property owners have connected on their own accord to city water, we have not required them to completely seal their well. They can still use that for irrigation. A lot of them choose to just get rid of it because it's already been failing. But at that point, the code does speak clearly. You do have to make sure they're completely separate systems because, like I said, we don't want well water going directly into city water, which would be really bad. And you really don't want city water going into the ground because then it would be unmetered or potentially unmetered. So just vice versa, you don't want to cross-connect systems in any way.
Right. And then the other question related to the notion of being able to more accurately track sewer charges. This kind of gets to that whole inflow and infiltration issue as well, which is the city is essentially penalized for situations where non-potable water is getting into the sanitary sewer system, and we're charged for treatment of that by Met Council. First, we're being charged to treat water that we didn't put into the system, and then second, depending on the volume of that, cities can actually be further required to address issues. And usually those issues are related to, breaks in pipes or things like that, where there's leaks coming in from stormwater into a sanitary sewer pipe or something like that. And we're working to resolve those, and we get funding from Met Council to help with that. But certainly having everybody on the water metering system allows for better tracking of actually what is supposed to be going in to the sanitary sewer treatment process as opposed to what is going in there. So that's something I see as a benefit of this as well. And I appreciate you talking about the notion that when the city originally required people to connect to city water, that there wasn't that time frame in there, because I was always sort of under the assumption that there was, but of course I wasn't around at the time, so I don't know. So I appreciated that. I think from my perspective that might be all I had. Oh, and once again, this was another one. I think this was one where there might have been some language. Yes,
Yeah.
on the first page on line 21, we just had an odd reference to the fee schedule being on the user's utility bill. And so we just added language saying it's determined in the fee schedule and charged to the utility bill, so that there was a little more segregation between what those things were. So I appreciate that. All right. Oh, and the only other thing I was going to ask about is in terms of if a well is already fairly old and maybe reaching the end of its potential life, I imagine there's probably a cost associated with, say, replacing the well and continuing to use well water, just related to either drilling a new well and all those costs, and or would such a installation even be permitted in the metro area these days?
So majority of the time you would not be, under even current code, you would not be allowed to drill a new well. You can kind of maintain your existing well, but at a certain point when your casing fails with the drill, it rots out or whatever, you're gonna need to, you will no longer be allowed to drill a new well. There's some very, very few exceptions to that. But I would say the vast majority of the current properties that are on it would not get a new well. So and that can be very costly though too, because like you said, to find good groundwater, depending on how deep it is, drilling wells is very costly. So it could actually be cheaper to actually connect to city water. From what we can tell, we did look into a handful of them. We don't believe unless someone has a deferred assessment, it would just be permit costs to connect. There's no assessment that was theoretically paid for back in the day by the predecessors, and they just never connected. But unless there's one that's deferred, that's on the records, but I don't recall any of them. So there shouldn't be a huge cost other than the construction cost to actually make the physical connection.
Thank you for that. All right, with that, then, if there aren't any other questions from council members, we will provide an opportunity for public comment. And once again, we just ask if you come up for public comment to introduce yourself by your name and address or street. And we have that 3-minute time limit, and I'll try to be gentle on that. Address comments or questions to the council.
Is it okay if both of us?
That's fine.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Brandon Heffron. This is my father-in-law, Jim Dare. We're residents of Roseville. We're actually we live in the property that he was mentioning that has the well very deep in the property. So that's our concern, is basically the cost of side of it, and just being it's cost prohibitive. Primarily, that's our concern. And we just love the well and the water that we have. So we wouldn't like to change it if we didn't have to. So I did a pretty extensive pros and cons of well water versus city water. And there's a lot of different health benefits to well water and things like that. But I don't need to go over all that stuff with you at this time. But that was just my main concern, is the cost of things. So, you wanna?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be the exception when you're talking about this. I understand that it's probably in pursuit of your mandate to care for the health, welfare, and benefit of city residents. We have lived in that place for now about 56 years. And we have a new well, or had one that's recent. The well that we originally had failed. And that was a Sandpoint well. And the well we have now is a deep well that very much resembles the diagram here. Currently, the well is about 375. It's about 300 feet back from the street. We do have two possible connections with the municipal water supply, but previously, I dealt with Roseville on that, and they said it would be so prohibitively expensive to put in the water that we're gonna waive the requirement to hook up to the water system, the municipal water supply. And so I guess I'm just here as a long-term resident and as someone who has had experience with this very challenge before, to ask that this property be accepted, excused from having to comply with the proposed ordinance.
Great. Thank you for your comments. I am going to make an exception to the rule that I talked about in terms of we'll answer questions at the end. I did have a follow-up with you. You mentioned that you replaced the well. Approximately how long ago was that done? Do you have a sense?
When was that? When was the?
About
well
15, 20 years ago.
15 to 20 years? Okay. No, that's just helpful to know that. That fills in the information.
Let's see, we moved in '68, and about 4 years after we moved in, we put in that new well because the old one failed. So 68, 72, that's 28 years, and 24 years is 48, 50.
It's 52.
Years. So it's been in there for 52 years.
The new well is 52 years, or
Yeah.
that's the 15 to 20 years?
The new well.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to understand. Okay, so the new well was about 4 years after the original, in about 72 timeframe roughly.
After the homeownership.
Got it, okay.
If my memory serves.
Sure, but, so it's almost as old as the original purchase of the home, basically.
Not as old as me, but.
Well, I wasn't even gonna say anything in that regard. Thank you for clarifying that information. All right, appreciate it.
I know we're talking about 10 years potentially down the road, but I really like our setup and I really like the water, and if we can keep the well as long as possible, and then we realize there is there's somewhat of a responsibility that comes with owning the well, and we're well aware of those responsibilities, and because there's costs that come with that responsibility as well, and we're open to maintain those responsibilities. So so we're basically asking maybe to grandfather that particular well in, and as well as like future have to replace that well.
We won't.
All right, appreciate your comments this evening. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask him a question?
A question from Councilman Rett.
Yes, thank you. You said your well is 300 feet back from the street. Where, I know your house is set back. I don't know, how far back is
300
the
to
house?
400.
The house is?
Yeah.
It's, the property is 165 by 475.
Okay.
The house is in the lower 50 feet of the property.
Is the well on the
And the
street
well-
side or on the
Yeah,
pond side?
No, the well is about midway in the house, but standing separate from it, of course.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep, good, thank you.
I think we've got all the questions answered.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this proposed ordinance change related to the private water supplies? Anyone else?
My name's Kara Seffron. I'm Brandon's wife, and Jim Deere's my dad. And yeah, I guess for me, what Jesse was saying, just as far as if there's already, as these fail for people, if they have to connect to city water, not really sure why there's like a date. And you kind of said like maybe you don't have to, you know, it's kind of something just put out there. So I don't know how strict that's going to be. But if he's thinking that even in 10 years there's only going to be like 5 left, I don't know why to force that time frame on people. So that would be just my only question. So.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this proposed ordinance change this evening? Seeing no one, we'll then close the opportunity for public comment on this item, and we'll proceed to council consideration. Any follow-up questions from the council? I did want to just double check in terms of the public comments. Just in terms of the timing. So I think it was alluded to that historically when cities changed from private water to city water, probably the model was to put some kind of time frame in there, but perhaps somehow City of Roseville didn't do that at the original time.
So I
Is
don't
it
know.
more common to have a time frame in there?
It's more, especially now, newer cities typically do that. A lot of times they did that, you know, you were required to pay the assessment, or you started charging a water charge from the get-go, even though you weren't. So that's another way to compel a connection is you're gonna pay water because we need to pay for the pipe in front of your house. So that theoretically could be another way to do it. But certainly most cities have put an end date on it to clean up their systems, so you don't have this variability between what's connected or not. But most newer systems, you know, developing suburbs put dates on, you're compelled to connect within 10 years or 20 years. When I was in Brainerd, that was very similar. So like I said, we didn't do that in the past. Why'd we choose 10 years now? Or 11 years out, we just picked that because we certainly don't want to pick 2 years out and compel people to connect. We want to make sure they have enough time to realize that this would be a requirement going forward in the future. But that date certainly could be a different date.
Thank you for that. Other questions from the council or perhaps a motion related to this proposed ordinance change? Councilmember Schroeder?
Yeah, I'm still, you know, and it's interesting that that was the concern I had, and then the one well that ends up showing up here tonight. Typically, when you have a change in zoning or requirements, people don't have to update things until you actually do construction or build a house or change something. And when you were trying to impose could be extremely expensive thing for a resident to do because we have this arbitrary date. That's what I'm struggling with on that. You know, and what kind of compromise can be done, you know, to help out with that, because, you know, do you wait till they sell the house? Do you wait till the well fails and not have a date on it, grandfather it in until it fails? I'm not sure. So that's the piece I'm struggling with, that typically we don't have our residents change things just because we change our code or ordinance like that, you know, especially if it's gonna cost them a lot of money. So I do like this idea of people on city water. I mean, absolutely, I think we wanna end up there where we, you know, get people hooked up. Yet, on the other hand, you know, do we impose a very expensive thing on someone because of an arbitrary date? So that's what I'm struggling with.
Other thoughts, Councilmember Atten?
I ask staff, it was brought up or by a few folks now on either side of this dais about grandfathering certain wells, and this one being quite exceptional. Is there precedent for something like that you've seen in other cities? You know, we look at 200 feet or something like that, or greater. Is that something that is feasible and would make sense, or does that create a double standard that's really hard to enforce later?
I think, you know, cost effectiveness needs to probably be a little bit. I think if I recall, when I was in Brainerd, we did make exceptions because we had some really weird lots, that had, you know, a really deep depth, and it would be a lot more difficult to connect. So, I think certainly there can be a little bit of that. If it's a lot of thinking of the risk of the way that's set back from their neighbors and whatnot, it's a lot different than, it's not a typical Roseville lot. So it is easier to see why that is clearly different. But certainly if we do that, I think we should at least at minimum define a distance from the road. That way it's not arbitrarily defined in case someone does have a weird property another one that's, we didn't catch, that looks weird. I don't recall what we used in Brainerd when I was there, but we could certainly look into what a reasonable distance is. I mean, at a certain point, there's a cost of drilling the well versus extending a pipe. And certainly the methods to extending pipe are a lot different than they were, you know, 10, 15 years ago. You can directional drill, so a water service, so you don't have to cut down trees or potentially rip up a driveway. If you want to go underneath it, you can do that. But there is a certain reason. I mean, it still costs you money to drill if you're 300 feet back or something.
And I just wanted to follow up too, just from the point of view of sort of treating like situations similarly. I mean, that's, I think, kind of part of what
Second part of my-
Councilmember Etton's question was, and maybe our attorney can shed some light on making exceptions, especially if it appears to maybe be one property or a small number.
Mayor Rowe, council members, well, first of all, if you want to consider some sort of exception or grandfathering, I would recommend that you lay it over so we can take a harder look at this. One of the things that I'm looking at as you're talking is the language in the ordinance draft, which says that single-family residents currently on well water but having municipal water available. Well, you know, based on what the testimony here, it sounds like this property was treated differently even at the time of installation for water. So this property may not actually satisfy the requirements of the ordinance and may already be grandfathered in. That's just one hypothetical example that I think should be looked into. But I'm always concerned about the law of unintended consequences. I am less concerned about treating similarly situated properties differently because we'll be thoughtful about the language. But, you know, if you've got one that's 400 feet back, and you've got one that's 300 feet back, and, well, they got a big hill, and, you know, I don't know what all the factors are. But, you know, the point being, ideally, you'd have staff take kind of a hard look. I would assume that some of these will be a little low-hanging fruit, and the fruit will be a little higher on the trees for others. So, you know, if you want to have kind of that analysis, I suggest we look at all of them. And then maybe bring some recommendations for language back.
And I did have a question too, Councilmember, and I didn't mean to cut you off if you had follow-up.
No, that's okay for now.
Just, do we have a sense of sort of what the typical cost would be for a more representative Roseville lot in terms of that connection cost? Perhaps related to new construction might be the best example.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, a majority of the residents, we have a curb stop stubbed out for them in the street behind the curb. So the majority of them, they just have to go from there to where their well location is. So if it's in the front yard, that might be only 25, 30 feet of pipe potentially, or if they want to replace it all the way to their utility room. So low end, maybe 5,000, maybe up to 10, but like I said, if it's in your backyard, then you might have to replumb your house or bring the service around the side, so that would go up. And then certainly if it's under a driveway or where the curb stop is, can cause a lot of issues. They were stubbed out 60, 70 years ago. People forgot about them. If it's next to a tree, you still have to dig and make that connection there, so you might have tree costs, stuff like that, or driveway. So it does vary, but some could be done really, really simply, potentially. But everyone's gonna vary.
Sure, and that's a good point to say, and I wasn't thinking about that, the fact that the city, when we put the pipes in the first place, we did take it to essentially roughly around the edge of the right-of-way where the curb stop valve is, and just didn't continue from there in certain cases for some reason.
Yeah, and I don't wanna say we did that 100, I can't guarantee we did it for all, but most likely they were all stubbed out. Very rarely do we come across one, but there is a potential chance if the lot was split or something, we didn't think of there'd be 2 lots where there is 1.
Sure.
So, but majority of them, they don't have to dig into the street.
Got it, got it. And the reason I was asking about that was the potential to think about it sort of in the flip of making an exception, which might be to say, is it in the public interest to have the city subsidize the excess cost for this exceptionally long connection versus the typical connection, because it's in the interest of the city to have it connected to the water, so that that mitigates the cost impact in these situations, but still gets people on the city water. So I wanted to, if we're gonna be looking at some potential changes or ways to approach these few lots in a different way, I think that might be something to also think about, unless council says, oh, no, we shouldn't be doing that. Councilmember Schroeder?
I agree. I think we should table this and let staff take a look at it and look at what, all the options. You know, should the city supplement? Should he grandfather in? You know, I think just maybe have staff take a look at some of the ways to handle this would be the way I'd like to see it done.
Councilmember Grau?
So then I've got a couple more questions. I'm sure it's in the code somewhere, but if this well does fail, because it's 52 years old now, and in 10 years it'll be 62 years old. Wells typically could last, 60 to 70 years old, but they don't last forever. And of course, the Sandpoint well fails more quickly because that's a different type of well than this one. But what happens when that fails now? Is it grandfathered in forever so that they can replace that well? Or if the property's sold, are they able to leave it with the property as it is?
I think those are considerations we would.
All needs to be looked at.
Yeah, because those,
Yeah.
this could go on a long time with an exception,
Yeah.
which is not in the best interest of the city, I don't think.
I don't know, Mr. Fryhammer, I saw you.
Well, I think the attorney, as she kind of mentioned, water availability is kind of the first thing. I guess it might be best to clarify what is availability. If I recall, I think when I was in Brainerd, the distance from city water was defined, so that might help clarify what's available water, because, yeah, is it a mile away, is that still available? At a certain point, it's not available, so that might be the one step to certainly help establish that threshold.
Okay. Staff feel that there's enough guidance in terms of this? I know, Councilmember Wright, you've got another question or point?
Yeah, I think it would be great to come back with some more thoughts along this line, but I would like to speak that in general, I am in favor of putting a time frame on this. I think there is enough compelling interest for the majority of properties that for me, it makes sense to have a time frame. But I'm also ready to talk about what a few properties may or may not need to logically make an exception. Not just make an exception, but this makes sense because of these core reasons.
Right. Councilmember Schroeder?
Yeah, I would agree with that. If we have a time frame in there with caveat that there's some exceptions to that rule, I'd be comfortable with that.
Sounds
I
like.
would like a hard time frame of something, and I don't know that it's 10 years, I don't know that it's 15, but I would like to see some time in the future where the city is going to be everyone on city water, because I know people like their well water, and I grew up on a farm and my mother loved her well water, but it's something you need to check. There are things that it gets contaminated, there are health issues, and I just think in the big picture, it's better to have everyone on the same page.
And I think the current timing is about 11 years, if I remember right.
Yep.
So, to my mind, that's the default unless we can justify
Yeah.
something longer
Right.
than
Yep.
that. And
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
just to help frame the discussion. All right, very good. Thank you again to staff and the Public Works Environment and Transportation Commission for bringing this one forward. But we're not done. But wait, there's more. We do shift gears a little bit to another area of Public Works concern, and that is the what used to be known as bus benches and is being updated to be courtesy benches. And I'll turn it over once again to Mr. Fryhan.
My papers are almost done here. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So, we are bringing before you a draft version of the bus bench ordinance. So this is currently 703.05. this ordinance hadn't been updated in numerous years. We had an inquiry last year that I think some council members saw from bench companies that had us take a look at it. We looked at a lot of other city ordinances to see if we were out of date, and on a lot of standards, we were out of date for just like term length, renewal details, bus standards, stuff like that. So we did take a look at it. We did present this to, I think, the Public Works Commission 2 times to get their feedback on should we allow benches in other locations. So we did go through the plan, looked at it, like I said, a bunch of other ordinances. Some of the suggestions that we got out of it was change it from a permit process to a license process. That's what most other cities do. Also change it to a courtesy bench, as was mentioned. Do a 2-year license agreement. The benches do not move around very frequently. In fact, most years that when they resubmit the permit, it's the exact same list as the previous year. Usually the only exception is if we require them to move a bench, so it should ease a little bit of administrative staff time. And then the big change that we asked the commission is, hey, should we be installing benches in different locations? Currently, the current ordinance says only along existing bus routes. So that has not been, we haven't specifically reviewed that a lot in the past because bus routes change. So there's a lot of current benches on stops that are no longer a bus route. So the Public Works, Environment, and Transportation Commission did recommend that we do allow them along pathways as well that were city-owned. And then we did put some requirements about spacing and location in there. And then, as I mentioned, we kind of just updated the general technical requirements to make sure they're ADA compliant. Some of the licensing requirements, insurance requirements, stuff like that. So with that, yeah, the map here kind of shows where the existing bus benches are. And so it does kind of show, like there used to be a route on County Road C. There's no longer one there, but the bus benches are. I will add, the majority of these bus benches are not put up based on demand. They're put up by companies that use it for advertising, so they're typically chosen by vehicle visibility due to vehicles on the road. So just keep that in mind. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that the council may have.
All right, and once again, on the bench handout, this was unrelated to the proposed changes, but there was missing language on line 51. It said within 15 feet of an existing blank on a roadway, and it should say transit shelters, which I think has been updated in the bench copy. So I appreciate staff clarifying that. With that, are there, once again, questions from council for staff on this proposed ordinance change? No. All right. Hearing none, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the proposed change from a permitting process to a license process and the other relatively technical updates to our bench ordinance? Seeing no one, we'll move to council consideration. Further questions or clarifications needed from the council? Otherwise, a motion related to this ordinance proposal would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve the updates to Title 7703 related to benches, and that's the bench handout, so to speak, once again. Discussion on the motion as the maker of the motion, Councilmember Schroeder.
No.
All right, seconder, Councilmember Etten.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, we've got the motion before us to adopt the ordinance change, once again in the bench handout. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0. I believe this one does have an ordinance summary request, so there would be a motion would be appropriate to authorize publishing a summary of this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Graff, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve an ordinance summary being published of this ordinance. Once again, this requires the 2/3 majority of the council, which in our case would be 4 votes. All those in favor of permitting or authorizing publication of the summary indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0, meeting the supermajority requirement. Thanks again. Then our final item under Public Works ordinance amendment changes is the always popular fog topic. And we'll turn it over once again to Mr. Fryhammer for this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is, deals with Chapter 802.15 of the City Code. This relates to the fog ordinance, which the city did enact in 2018. Overall, the ordinance is working. We did just want to make some pretty minor clarifications just to help us really deal with applicants as they're applying, just to make things a little more clear if we found a few flaws in our system. So no dramatic changes to it, just more clarification. So with that, I'll certainly open it up to questions of council. And there is no, it's the only one we didn't have a bench handout for, so.
We got lucky. All right, are there questions from the council for staff on this proposed ordinance change? No. All right, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the proposed changes on this ordinance related to fats, oils, and grease and regulation thereof in the city? All right, seeing no one, with that then, we have the proposed ordinance before us, and once again, this is as presented in the staff materials originally. Is there a motion from the council?
So, second.
It's been moved by, everybody's eager to move.
Now let's go.
The five ordinance. Yeah. Moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve the fat, oils, and grease ordinance update. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Groff, seconder. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the ordinance update signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0. I believe we do also have a summary for this one, because it's fairly substantial. So is there a motion to authorize publication of the summary?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Etten. Once again, requiring the 2/3 majority to authorize the summary publication. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously 4-0, meeting the 2/3 majority requirement. Thank you again to staff for all their time and effort on this, and we'll see a couple of these coming back related to the water and meter side of things. Council, I don't know that we need to take a break at this time unless,
No,
it's urgent, all right?
if it takes another half hour, we're in trouble.
Yep, exactly, okay. With that, then, I will move to consideration of the city council minutes. We do have the minutes of our January 29th regular meeting, our February 12th regular meeting, as well as our February 21st special meeting we just had last week to interview applicants for commissions. Changes and corrections have been submitted to staff and are presented to the council this evening. Are there any other changes or corrections that are needed or a motion to approve? One or all of them?
Well, I wasn't here on the 29th.
All right, we
So
can
we should
consider that one
separate 'em.
separately.
Yes.
Move approval of 29th minutes
All right, so moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Ratten to approve the minutes of the 29th
as corrected.
as corrected, as presented. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, that passes 3-0 with Councilmember Schroeder abstaining. Then we have the remaining minutes of our February 12th and February 21st minutes, or meetings. Is there a motion related to those?
So moved as changed.
Second.
All right, been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve those 2 minutes, once again, our February 12th and our February 21st meetings. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously and those meeting minutes are approved. That then brings us to the consent agenda. We have no items removed, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce these various consent items for our consideration this evening. Mr. Trudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of $2,811,845.33. Item 10B approves several expenditures, including the repair of catch basins and manholes, an annual contract for streetscape maintenance, a purchase of PFAS-free firefighting foam, and a 1-year contract with My Sidewalk for city demographic information. Item 10C approves renewal of a consumption display permit for Hidden Puzzle Room at 1975 Oakcrest Avenue. Item 10D approves awarding the contract for the operation of the annual cleanup day for the next 3 years. Several requests were solicited from waste management companies, and one proposal was submitted by Lightning Disposal. Lightning Disposal has operated the annual cleanup day for Roseville for the past 12 years. Users pay about 2/3 of the cost, and the city pays the other third, which has ranged between $3,600 to $10,000 for the city, depending on the volume of materials taken in. The city's cost will be paid out of the recycling fund, and this year's event will be held on April 27th, 2024. Item 10E approves entering into a cooperative construction agreement with the City of Falcon Heights for the 2024 sanitary sewer lining project for work both in Roseville and in Falcon Heights. As you know, Roseville provides engineering services to Falcon Heights. For the 2024 lining project, the City of Falcon Heights will pay an estimated $230,000 for the work done in their city. Item 10F approves entering into an amended agreement with Rice Creek Watershed District for the ongoing maintenance for stormwater and drainage infrastructure. with the construction of the Twin Lakes Trail from County Road C to Oasis Park. Modifications to the 2015 agreement must be made to reflect the responsibility of the city to maintain that infrastructure along that corridor. Item 10G approves entering into an agreement with Ellers to update the previous utility rate study. Ellers had conducted a utility rate study for the city in 2020 and did an update in 2022. Given the cost increases from St. Paul Water and Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, plus the rising costs of capital improvements, it is appropriate to conduct another analysis of our utility funds to help set rates for 2025. The study will look at our water, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater funds. Staff is recommending using Ellers again for the study due to their familiarity with the Roseville utility system and their previous work. The cost for the study will be $22,800 and will be covered from the water, sewer, and stormwater funds. Item 10H approves entering into professional services agreement with St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce and a cooperative funding agreement with the cities of Maplewood and St. Paul regarding the continued funding of the Rice and Larpenteur Alliance. This agreement will continue Roseville's cost of $40,000 for a year towards the Rice and Larpenteur Alliance, and this amount was budgeted as part of the 2024 EDA budget. And that is the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion with respect to the consent items?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Atten, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve the items in the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved. That brings us then to future agenda review and reports, announcements, communications. Mr. Trudgeon, on the future agendas.
Yes, just real quickly, our next meeting is next Monday. We had originally scheduled a quarterly EDA meeting, but there's no items to take up on that evening, so we will be canceling that meeting. At the regular council meeting, we do want to do something that's a little bit new, based on conferring with the city attorney that we should really be holding public hearings whenever there is a delinquent account. Previously, that's been on the consent agenda. So no real change to anything that we're gonna present. It's just the listing of people that are delinquent, but we do need to give an opportunity for people to be heard. So we'll open the public hearing and carry on, and we're making a decision on that. We also will want to have the council approve commission appointments based on the interviews, so just a reminder to get your picks in. We also want to bring back the approval of the streetlight policy that was talked at the last meeting, and then also review and consider hotel licensing ordinance. It's a big ordinance. This is the first time you see it. We will have it published, but no need to necessarily approve it if there's questions and other things that you want to talk about. So we'll be bringing that forward. March 11th, it's kind of more set up as a work session. We have two major items, really. One would be the commission's scope, duties, and functions. You talked about it a couple meetings ago. This is all the other commissions besides the HRIC, and there's some feedback, so we'll bring that for adoption. And then really a city council discussion on the scope, duties, and functions of the HRIC. I think there's been a lot of conversation, but the council themselves haven't had a chance to talk about what direction to go, so that will be teed up for that. And those are the really two items that we have for that meeting. Then the 18th, we recognize any outgoing commissioners. We also want to have a presentation by our housing navigator, Karen McCollar. We just received word, we did receive a 2-year grant, I believe, from the state to fund that position. As you recall, we identified that as a possibility in the budget process, and so we're glad that got through, but we thought it was time to come back and just talk about what the work she's doing. And then also received the excess cash reserve report as we start looking, closing out 24, or 23, I should say, going through 24, and then working on the 25 budget.
Great, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions about the future agenda? I would just ask on the public hearing, do we specifically individually notice the properties that are going to be or proposed to be on the list?
Yeah, and we've always been doing that in the letter we send to them. We say the council will be taking this up on such and such a day.
Okay,
So
the difference will be, now we'll be
Yeah.
specifically
Yeah.
delineating it as a public hearing.
Right.
And taking action that way.
Yeah. Occasionally over the years, I recall every once in a while, I've got somebody coming forward at a meeting, but it's been a long time since somebody's come forward on that.
So it'll be taken out of the consent agenda and just put on a different item and
Right,
just have
yeah.
for, just including all of them, right?
Yeah. The same action we're looking
Yeah.
for.
I get it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then just a reminder to council members, on the commissions, I believe we have 2 vacancies on each commission.
Right.
So council members can indicate in their preferences, at least 2 and up to 4 preferences if they wish, but certainly at least 2 in what they communicate to staff to go into the packet. So just a reminder on those numbers. Great.
That's by probably Wednesday at noon.
Yep.
Or
it's
that's
Wednesday,
when they start
yeah.
calling us and banging on our door.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll send another reminder. But
That sounds good.
We're looking at you, Jason.
Oh, yeah, look at me.
just check.
I watched you guys on
For the
TV.
benefit of whoever it might be.
Whoever might
and we
be
appreciate
not have
you,
turned that in yet.
as a courtesy, asking that
I
question.
watched.
All right. With that, are there any council member initiated items for future meetings or reports or announcements? Anything new on NYFS that you wanted to bring?
You know, she gave you a really brief overview of what's been going on. I'm going like, wow, you compressed that down pretty good. One of the things I have to brag about is she's very good at seeking out grants, and she has done a dynamite job on that. I mean, she didn't.
That's a skill.
She didn't go into the numbers at all there, and it's impressive. So
That
if you-
takes skills to
If
do
you have
that.
time to look at the brochure, take a peek at it.
Absolutely.
Great, great. Thank you again. All right, if there is no further business before us, the only other item on our agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Bratton to adjourn. There's no discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 7:45 PM. Thank you, everyone.